I remember making my first sale and it being for $397. And it took me months to create that sale. And I remember thinking, how the heck am I supposed to do this every single day so that I can get to the $100,000 a year level? I didn't know how to do it, but obviously we figured it out. And now we're here. Now we're hit the million and then the multi-million level. And there is a stage, a step, and a process for all different revenue levels that you're going to go through. The first major one is 100,000. Then there's another one at about 250. There's another one at 500, and there's another one to get to a million. But I will tell you that the hardest is going from 0 to 100,000. And I'm going to break down exactly what you need to do, what struggles you're about to face, or what you need to overcome at each one of those levels. So I don't care if you're still struggling to get your first 100K or struggling to get to a million. This episode is for you. Honestly, this is one of my best episodes I've recorded in a while, if I do say so myself. So if that's interesting to you, well, keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the difference between your first 100K and your first million. So I know a lot of you guys, most of our listeners are usually under 100,000 a year, but I do know that we do have some people that are in the 100,000 mid hundreds, so like multiple 100,000s, and there are a few people in the millions, revenue wise. Now, I want to talk about the difference between the two because there are some massive shifts and changes. And what I always say is when I talk to a course creator, I talk to someone, I can tell how much money they make within a couple minutes. And one of the ways that I can tell is by what they perceive to be as a problem. So, you know, a course creator who sees like setting up an ad as a problem probably is not at $100,000 a year yet, or they are, but they got there organically. But I have almost never seen someone who's at the $1 million level who's like, doesn't have the problem of, I don't know how to set up an ad. And hopefully this doesn't sound too mean, but this is going to be like blunt Brandon. Also, if a 7-figure entrepreneur, like someone who's doing $1 million a year in revenue, didn't know how to set up an ad, like they didn't know it, they also wouldn't perceive that as a problem. They'd just be like, yeah, I'll just figure it out. Like they're not going to come to me and complain about it or be like, I need to figure this out. Oh my God. They're just be like, we'll just figure it out. We'll just hire someone, or we'll just like watch a YouTube. Like their ability to solve problems is much higher than the person who hasn't hit 100,000 yet. And again, this isn't a judgment. It's just usually the way it works. And I was the same way. Like when I remember when I first got started, and I was like, I got started in this industry creating websites and trying to put like Google AdSense on it and drive traffic to websites and like just trying to make ad revenue that way. And I remember back then not understanding how to set up, like a page in the way that I wanted it on a website. And I perceived that to be a problem. And I spent weeks maybe not weeks, but I spent days trying to figure it out. It was something that was on my mind. I was complaining about it. Like I was a little bit in victim mode about it. And then I look at that now and I'm like, how is that possibly even a problem? Because the problems that I deal with now are so much higher level. They're just bigger issues. They're bigger problems. Where like a website page, not knowing how to set it up is as simple as like, let's just go to Fiverr and hire someone to do that. Whereas back then I just wouldn't have even thought to do that. I wouldn't have wanted to pay anyone to do that. So my ability to solve problems now are different. We have more money to solve problems now too, which also helps. But the point that I'm getting at is that there's certain things that are going to happen when you're on your journey to your first 100,000. And then there's certain things that are going to happen when you're on your journey, when you're already at your first 100,000 and you're trying to get to a million. And honestly, like from 100,000 to a million is a pretty big jump. Because I do think that there are some hurdles in between that. Like there's different milestones, like getting to your first 250,000 a year, then your first 500,000 a year. Those are also pretty big milestones that will require different things to have happen. So when you're at 100,000, you're trying to get to 250, it's going to be much different. Like the way you got to your first 100 is going to be different how you get to your 250. And the way you got to 250 will be slightly different than how you got to 500. There's going to be some major changes going on in there. Like team probably looks different. You're probably spending more money on ads and marketing. Like there's different expenses that are going to come up. But really, I wanted to just for this episode talk mostly about how do we get to your first 100 and then how do we get to your first million? What are the things that need to happen? What's going on there? What are the biggest milestones and what's the difference between the two? So let's start off with your first 100,000. To be honest with you, I actually think your first 100,000 is harder than your first million. And it's harder because there is a lot of learning that needs to happen. There is a lot of like trying to figure things out, trying to figure out your groove, trying to figure out how to sell, how to speak, how to talk. There's a lot of firsts that need to happen. So you're going to have to do like your first webinar or challenge or like sales mechanism. There's going to be the first time for that. You got to drive your first sale. There's like creating your first video, creating the first content. There's so many firsts that have to happen. And not only is there so many firsts, but then you have to master those things so they actually start to work. And that's really hard, is like mastering so many things so quickly is very difficult. But then there's also like, then you got to create the course, you got to create the product. There's a lot of freaking work that has to go into creating your first 100,000. Whereas when we look at like, how do we go from 100 to a million, there's not a lot of firsts that need to happen. There's usually just doing more of the thing that's working. And yeah, there might be some first, like hiring team members and running a team and that sort of thing, right? Doing more, like you're just doing more of the stuff. And then, yeah, when you do more of things, you have to figure out how to make that work too. So, right. So like if you're driving $100,000 in sales, how do we get more sales? And it's like, well, let's learn how to scale now. Let's learn how to like, maybe you've only done organic and now you got to add in Facebook ads, right? So you're learning different avenues, how to bring in different avenues. So there's a lot of firsts that need to happen. So when we get to our first 100K, I actually think it's harder because there's so much. You're brand new, right? It's kind of like the difference of trying to learn to play baseball for the first time and hit a ball and catch it and field and throw and all of that stuff, to getting to the point where you're like just able to hit the ball in little league off of a pitch, right? So you're at that place, and then try to get from that place to the high school team. It's like, you don't have to learn a lot of stuff. Yeah, you're going to have to put in hard work. Like you're going to have to put in the hours, but it's not like you're really learning a lot of things. So in my opinion, it's a lot harder to get to your first 100K because there's the first sale. Then we have to piece everything together. And this industry is not like, it's not like there's just one software that you just get to use. There's so many effing softwares that you guys have to have, right? There's like your email sequence and your autoresponders and like stuff to set up the landing pages and sales pages, and then like checkout and systems, and like, where do you host your course at? And like, there's so many different softwares that you got to learn and you got to piece it together. And when I've been doing the $17 funnel and trying to do it myself with a lot of new softwares that I've never used before, like it takes some freaking time. Like it's not super easy. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So we have your first sale. And I know for me, generating my first sale was really hard. It was really difficult. It took a really long time. But I do remember when it happened. I was sitting in the back of a car. We were going wine tasting. It was a big family event, and we were sitting in the back of the car because everyone was carpooling, because we're all drinking, can't be driving. So we had one designated driver sitting in the back of the car, and I was just checking emails, and like this email came in for a sale for $397. And it kind of like took me by surprise. I didn't realize it was my sale. I thought maybe I had bought in something, or like it was just like a test email, but it was my email. It was like, I made a $397 sale. I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. And I actually made it because I was, putting tutorials and things like that, which is ironic because I'm not a big tutorial person now, but that sort of thing inside of like different forums and things like that, helping people how to SEO videos, and then linked back to my stuff. And then someone ended up buying through that. That was my marketing back then. and then making YouTube videos. And then eventually from there, what I started doing is going like, okay, I could sell this SEO thing. And then I started figuring out, well, how do I build an audience? And I started putting out YouTube videos. And so I just started, there was a lot of stuff to figure out. Right. So to get to my first 100,000, I had to start doing a lot of that stuff. But the thing is when you start to do that and you make one sale, it's like, okay, great. You can see the momentum, but also there's this mental part that you have to go over, which is like, because I remember sitting there going like, okay, I just made $400. Like, this is great. But it took so much work to produce one $400 sale. How the hell do I do this and generate sales like this every day? Like, that's impossible. I don't understand how people do this. I remember thinking, I don't understand how people get like $400 a day. Like, because this took me months to generate one sale. How do I get this in a place where we're generating that a day, right? And if you would have told Brandon back then, like, well, you're eventually going to do $2 to $3 million a day, which comes out to, or a day, that would be nice, a year. I wonder, let me see. I got to do some math. I'm just going to do 2.5 million divided by 365. If you told Brandon back then, your company will average $6,800 a day, then like, there's no way. I just want to do that a month. Like, can I just do $6,800 a month? That would be nice. And like, even then I couldn't fathom that possibility. Now our company it could do 5 to 6.8 or 6.8 thousand a day on average. And that blows my freaking mind. So when you get to the 100,000, the first 100,000, there is this like mind F that goes on of like, how do I continue to do this on a bigger scale? So that's one big thing that you'll have to deal with. But you're also doing everything yourself. So it just takes so much time. So all the things that you need to do to like produce $1,000 a day or $500 a day, or even $330 a day, which would be around 10,000 a month, which is, 100K. To do those things, there's this, you're taking on all the workload, you're doing everything yourself, you're trying to figure out how to sell the damn thing. And then you have to like do it consistently and find an avenue that brings consistency. Because what I was doing back then is just like putting tutorials in forums wasn't a very consistent way of doing it. So that's when I started moving to a more consistent method of bringing in leads and audience. And that's when I started using YouTube and wasn't using ads yet. And I started just doing a lot of YouTube and building my email list and doing webinars, and that consistency, the consistency of our YouTube channel, bringing in leads, and then me doing webinars was able to get us to our first 100,000. But it's not really scalable because it's like, okay, well, I want to dump more money into this. How do I do that? I can't. I just have to make more videos. And so I just got stuck in this routine of like having to make more videos. But then that's when I started these doing local videos. And so I started selling SEO for monthly pricing and selling bigger ticket items and things like that. And it became very easy. Grew that to about $14,000, $15,000 a month, just selling local videos to people and charging monthly for the SEO of it. And so what I started to realize is to get to that first 100,000 is that there's a couple elements that had to come together. And some of the elements that had to come together were things like, is there a way to add reoccurring revenue into the business model? And so that's why I do like payment plans, even though technically they aren't reoccurring revenue, but it feels like it is sometimes because we have this consistency of monthly income coming in, which is really, really nice. So we had to figure that side of it out. Is like, is there an opportunity for reoccurring? But also what I realized is like the reoccurring also is a little bit of back end. And we'll talk about back end here in a second. So the reoccurring model worked really well, but then we sold higher ticket. But really what it came down to was I needed a consistent way to keep sales coming in. And that's one of the things that I didn't realize to get to your first 100,000 is that you can't do these one-off things that just produce little chunks of money. You need to actually find a way that's going to produce consistent leads and consistent sales. So if that means like start a YouTube channel where you're bringing leads from there and then you're just doing a weekly webinar, great, do that. But there needs to be some sort of method or whatever to get there. And then also at the same time, you're probably going to start to get your first 100K, need some sort of team. So that could be like something as simple as a virtual assistant, but you don't need a big team. Just 1 or 2 people is probably all you need, virtual assistant. Okay. So again, to get to that first 100K, that's usually what it takes. It's going to take that focus. There's going to be a lot of grunt work that you got to get done. But the problem also is that expenses are going to start to come up. So everyone thinks I want to make my first 100K, and it's like, okay, great. That's fine and dandy. But what they don't realize is that 100K is not going in your pocket. And that's the other thing that blew my mind was like, well, how do I like pay myself? Because like my expenses are really high. And so when you make your first 100K in revenue, you're really making like probably 25 to 75,000 a year. Probably not even 75. You're probably making more like 50. And then if you want to keep anything in the business account, then you're not really taking that home either. So that was the other thing that blew my mind. Is like, damn, it was so hard to make the first 100,000, but I didn't make anything. I was still living with my in-laws back then. So that was a really hard thing as well. But what it did is it laid the foundation. And so the first 100K, what it really does is it lays down the foundation to get you to that million. Now I know I'm going to just interrupt real quick. I know there's going to be some ads and things that come up in this episode. But if you feel like you're that person who's trying to get to your first 100K, what I would encourage you to do, James Wedmore is opening up his Business by Design very soon, if it's not open already. And you can go to brandonlucero.com/BBD, brandonlucero.com/BBD. And what we're going to do is if you do enroll in James Wedmore's Business by Design program, I'm actually going to be coaching you through this process for free if you buy through our link, because we get a commission for 6 to 8 weeks. Not only that, but we have 11 different bonuses that we're going to add into that to help you get to your first 100K, or if you're already there, to help you get to that million. Okay. So when we coaching you guys through this is one of the reasons why I want to do this episode, is to show you what you're in store for, what the process looks like to get to your first 100 or to your million. And I'm going to be able to coach you through it, which is something we only do once a year. So go to brandonlucero.com/BBD. If it's open for enrollment, you can enroll there, or you can just get on the wait list and we'll email you when it is open. Okay. So with that being said, now that you're at first million, 100,000, it's great because you've laid the foundation down. So what's happened is you've laid the foundation down of what it is you need to do in order to get to the million. So the hardest part now is there's three major things that I feel like if you're at 100K, they're going to take to get to million that are hard. Number one is you need to scale out your sales process until it plateaus. And so what I mean by that is like, if you are running Facebook ads to generate leads and that funnel's working and it got you to 100K, spend more money until it plateaus and you have no more. There's like nothing left. Oh, sorry, not nothing left, but it just isn't like you will hit a plateau. You're like, okay, it's just cost is getting too much. We're not hitting enough. The sales, you'll find this plateau. Then when we hit that point, what we start looking for are different lead generating avenues. So different lead generating avenues could be like, okay, well, we're running Facebook ads to opt into these webinars for free. What if we gave out a free PDF first and people opted in for the free PDF? And then inside the PDF, we had links to register for our weekly webinar. It's like, okay, great. What if this PDF gets downloads for $4? And then we just invite people over or for $1, and we invite people over after they opt into the webinar and half of them do it. It's like technically we're getting registers for $2. So you're trying to find different avenues, or maybe we do a low ticket offer and we sell like the $17 offer and it costs us $17 to produce the sale. So we're getting customers for free. And then we invite all those people over to the webinar. Now we're getting leads for free. So we just start looking for different avenues to generate more leads into the sales mechanism is number one. Number two is that you're going to have to figure out team, because you're not going to be able to do it yourself. There's going to be too much stuff, because as you start to move more, build out more lead avenues, that means more opt-in pages, more funnels, more management. Like you can't set all that up yourself. And then you're going to have more fulfillment, right? So you're going to have more people coming in and buying your courses. And that means more customer support. That means more questions getting answered, more people, like trying to find things inside the program. Like there's so much stuff that's going to happen as you start to scale that out. There's also be more problems that come up. So there's going to be problems with ads or needing new ads. And then also at the same time, you're trying to build up like organic. So now you're pushing out more content. So like, then your email list is getting bigger. So now you're trying to like nurture that. So there's just like so many things that you have to do as you start to scale. But I think the biggest one that people don't realize is back end. So what I mean by back end is how do we fulfill and make sure that students are getting results? Because now I mean, it's a real deal now. Like people are going through your program. They want a result. They want a transformation. You don't have the time to do one-on-one for everyone. When you're at your first 100K, you might be able to like still give everyone one-on-one attention. But when you're at going to 1 million or more, you don't have time to give everyone one-on-one attention. It doesn't exist, right? So you're going to kill yourself if you try to. So you need team to like manage that. Then you're going to have, like I said, more customer support things, credit card issues, people not making their payments. You could have refund issues, but not only that, then you need the program to make sure there's no broken links. There's none of this stuff happening, right? So we need team to work on all of that. So we have the back end, but also there's a whole nother thing on back end that most people don't really talk about, which I think is really important to get you to that first million. The thing that most people don't talk about to get to your first million that comes to back end is back end sales. And for us, usually around 50% of our revenue comes from back end sales. And what I mean by that is selling more things to your customers. So this could be, and this happens in a lot of different ways. This could be renewing people into coaching programs. So like if you do a year-long or a monthly or a 6-month coaching program, it's renewing people back into that. Like, how do you get them to renew? How do you get them to like do another round? It could be that. It could be, if you have a membership site, moving people into higher level things. How do we move people into higher level like options? How do we move people through different phases? So I know a lot of people that have like start off with one signature program, and then on the back end, anyone who graduates their programs gets moved into the next program, and then the next program, and then the next program. So there's so many different ways to have back end sales, but if you don't have a back end sales process, you're losing money. And so, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, but selling things to customers, your current customers, is so much easier than trying to bring on a new customer. And so if you don't have like, and if you want to get to the million mark, you also need someone to manage the back end. And so within our company, we actually have a department that's dedicated just to the back end, which is sales, back end sales, renewals, fulfillment, and customer support. And so we have one person who manages all that with a team underneath her, but those are her responsibilities or her KPIs, is managing all of that. And so those are three things, the major three things that I've found in building up our businesses. And over the past couple of years, and this isn't something I'm using to brag about, but every program that we create now generally does over $1 million in sales in the first 12 months. And the reason why that happened isn't because I have a magical skill of creating courses that sell. It's because of my experience of being able to sell things, create things, get things fulfilled, building the back end behind it. And so these skills, if you guys are trying to get to your first 100,000 or 1 million, it's like, I think so many people focus on, let me design the most beautiful, perfect course that's just going to sell. And it's like, you could have the most amazing product in the world. And there are a lot of products. There's so many products that just are amazing and better than other products on the market, but they just never sell. And they go unseen because they got out marketed by someone else. And so what we have to realize too is like, yeah, you do need a good product, right? You do need to be able to deliver on the promise. You do need all of that stuff, but it really comes down to these fundamentals that I'm talking about today. Is like, if you're trying to get to your first 100,000, there's so much stuff to figure out. I actually think getting to your first 100,000 is harder than getting to your first million, because there's so many things that you have to figure out, so many things you have to master, but it lays down the foundation at that point that when you want to go from 100,000 to 1 million, it's just doing more of what is already working. The biggest focuses that you're going to have is, like I mentioned, the back end. So you're going to have back end fulfillment, back end sales, customer support. These are the biggest things. So you're going to have to focus a lot on team building as well, and systems and processes to go from 100,000 to 1 million. But there's not really a lot to figure out. Like, you already know how to produce money. You already know how to produce sales. You know how to deliver. It's just doing more of that. And so again, if you're trying to go from 100 to 1,000,000, the biggest focus is going to be on how do I scale the things that I've already been doing, but doing it in a way that doesn't kill me. Now, if your guys are doing it right, in order to get to 1,000,000, you should actually, it's not uncommon for you to be working less hours than you did when you got to your first 100K, because it's a fucking grind to get to your first 100,000. Like, it really is. Like I mentioned earlier, there's so many things to figure out. You got to set up all your softwares. You got to set up all your social media. You got to and you're doing it all yourself. Then you got to design the course, and you have to figure out how to sell the thing, and then sell the thing consistently. So you have sales coming in every day. Like I said, it took me months to produce my first sale, and I had no idea how the hell am I supposed to do this and produce this amount of money every single day. Like, it blows my mind. I just could not comprehend. Like, when I made that first $400 sale, it took me months to produce that sale. I'm like, I don't know how I'm supposed to get $400 a day. Like, that makes no sense to me. I don't understand. There's so much work to get to this point, but I figured out the foundation. I figured out the way to do it. I figured out the pathway, and then I just did more of it. And then we added in more ways to do it. And like I mentioned earlier, we did the math, and now the company produces anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000, $7,000 a day. And that still blows my mind, because I remember sitting there in my in-laws' bedroom, sitting there thinking, how the hell do people produce $400 a day online? I don't understand it. And now we're doing more than 10 times that. So the reason why I wanted to do this episode today, like I mentioned earlier, is that my buddy James was one of my biggest mentors who allowed me to get to this spot. And he is hosting his training, which hopefully you guys have registered for, but he's also opening up his program that he does once a year. It's either, depending on when you listen to this episode, it's either already opened or it'll be opening within the next couple of days. And so what I want you guys to do is to go to brandonlucero.com/BBD. That's brandonlucero.com/BBD. And you guys can go there. You can sign for his program there, but you want to use our link, because I do get a commission when you guys enroll through our link. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be coaching you for the next 6 to 8 weeks on how you can get from 0 to your first 100,000. Or if you're at the 100,000, we will have a focus on how to go from 100,000 to 1,000,000 as well. And so not only that, but we have a lot of different bonuses. I want you guys to go check it out. Just go to brandonlucero.com/BBD. Check it out. If you have any questions, let us know. Enroll. Make sure you send your receipts to us as well. All the email, the instructions and stuff is there on that page. So go to brandonlucero.com/BBD, and I'll see you guys there.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.